Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. Gifted on and off the field, developing the whole person. Hi, friends. It's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me, and I have a really good friend of mine, Dianne Alli, with me. He is at the University of Florida. As you all know, I'm a big Gator, right? So whenever somebody is invested in developing young people, I'm always interested in them. So I graciously asked Dianne to be on the show with us today, and he said yes. And so I'm very excited to have him here. And we're going to talk about transformation, developing ourselves personally, and how we help lead and mentor younger people so that they can transform and be everything they're meant to be. So the field in this conversation for him sometimes is a football field, but I also know it's been a basketball court at one point in his world, and it's also the field of our lives. So I want all of us to just take a minute and expand our understanding to see that we can use these analogies to keep growing and transforming in our own life. And Dianne is going to guide us on some of that. So get your tea or your coffee or your butter and be ready for a really good show. So Dianne, thank you so much for coming on Someone Gets Me. I'm so delighted that you're here today.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. This is cool.
Oh, I'm so excited. When you said yes, when I first asked you, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And the reason why I asked you, which is what I want to lead in the beginning of the show with, the reason why I asked you is when I met you the very first time and I could feel your energy. You sat next to me and I'm like, I don't know who he is, but there is a presence about him that has my attention. So what I know is that people don't come by that easily, and that we've had journeys to get to a place where we're confident and competent. So I would like it if you wouldn't mind sharing with all of us a little bit about how you got where you are, like what even interested you in player development? What is it even? And how'd you get here?
Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate your kind words. So I'll kind of give you the story of how I kind of got here, and I'll start all the way back. So my parents are both Nigerian immigrants. My dad is a civil engineer. My mom worked as a lawyer. Myself and my siblings were born in London, England. Lived there till I was about 8 years old. Kind of bounced between London and Nigeria a little bit, and then my dad actually went to university in Canada, and so he knew that once he could, he wanted to send our family to Canada. So he sent us there, and I grew up most of my younger years in Canada up until I was about 14, 15-ish. Soccer and sports was always like huge in my family. We were born to compete. Everywhere my brothers and I, like, we would always compete. We would always be fighting over things, chasing things, running out, we just always compete. It was just naturally just embedded in who we were. And, my parents were also, athletes. And so like they naturally just taught us how to compete. So that was always in our blood. So at a young age, soccer was my first love, I guess you could say, first sport that I started playing, and then eventually, as I started growing, everyone kind of suggested basketball. Initially, I wasn't a fan; I didn't really care for it, but afterward, give it a chance. I started. I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of good at this thing, and kind of took that off, and that gave me opportunities to play on different AAU teams and traveling teams and developmental teams. So I, got to play throughout Canada and the United States. And that just kind of helped me understand that, there's different ways to kind of develop your craft. And, once you go from one tournament to the next tournament, there's a new best team in that tournament. And so you can kind of see yourself pairing yourself and matching yourself up to some of the best competition in the country. Eventually, I was offered an opportunity to go to Proctor Academy, which is a private school in the Northeast. And so I went there with a primary focus to kind of work on my basketball skills. It was a private school, so I got a scholarship to go there. Lord knows that we couldn't afford for me to go there as is, but was fortunate to get a scholarship to go there. So that was a fun experience. And as much as we traveled as a family, that was the first time I was by myself, being able to travel and living by myself. And so about 14, 15-ish, I was kind of, off of my own, so to speak. Obviously, my parents were still keeping tabs on me, but, I had to manage my own time, manage my own money, and, how do I practice and also keep up with academics and things like that. So that was a really important part in my development because that kind of taught me how to use some of the skills that my parents kind of instilled in us as we were growing older. So it was opportunity for me to kind of apply some of those things and got to get to meet new people, right? I think one of the benefits that I've had is being able to live in different places. You see different cultures, see different people, and you're able to kind of adapt and assimilate a little bit easier, and also able to understand different cultures and people a little bit easier too as well. So at that school, one of the requirements is we had to play two sports, and so many of the other people that were there did their main sport, and then they did something else just to kind of meet the requirement. And what I did was I was like, I want to do football because in my mind now there's a big disconnect here. I now know this now, but in my mind I was like, football players are always big and they have good footwork and they're strong. Naturally, if I played football, I would naturally, just get that. There's work involved in that, which, obviously I've learned over the years in my career. But so I played football and didn't really know much about it. My older brother was actually bigger into football than I was. I was a basketball guy, so to speak. And so played football and really kind of fell in love with it. I had a lot of opportunities in basketball to go to college, and in that one year, I got a lot of opportunities to play football in college, which was pretty cool to kind of have that reinforced so early, which I know many people aren't that lucky and blessed to have that opportunity. So, did the whole recruiting circuit, went to different colleges, visited different teams and things like that. It came down to Stanford and Florida. I actually committed to Stanford, and I know the coaches there. This was a tough decision, but committed to Stanford. Had gone to visits there, but then Coach Meyer, offered and said, "Hey, just don't close your mind off to being in Florida. Just take a visit. You have a visit left. Take a visit and just see how it goes." I took a visit and I was like, "Oh man, I got to go here." I mean, it was definitely special. It was something that I hadn't experienced. It felt like the level of expectation, the level of excellence was so much higher, and that was something that just drove me. I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be better by coming here. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be pushed to be better, both on and off the field." And so I came here and. Um, Long story short, came here, played at the University of Florida, wide receiver. Unfortunately, my career didn't go the way I planned it to go. Had never really sustained any significant injuries growing up, and then all of a sudden, I've had about 10 major surgeries throughout my course of my college career here, course of 4 or 5 years, which obviously was a transition shift, and there was a lot of struggle and pain and learning and growth that happened during that process. And from that, that's kind of where I started finding out what player development was specifically for me. We had a player development guy on our team, but it kind of more focused on more reactive than proactive approaches to developing and training and helping people grow. And so through that process, I went through different struggles. I saw my teammates going through different struggles. And eventually, like the coaches kind of leaned on me as a leader to help some of our younger guys who are transitioning and having a difficult time kind of getting into college. And so I saw myself as a leader, I saw myself as a mentor, and that was reinforced by the coaching staff, the support staff and whatnot. And so I didn't know what player development was, but I knew that I enjoyed I found more worth, I found more fulfillment in being able to, even though I couldn't physically play, being able to help others play and do their thing. And that brought me a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't really had until that point in my career. And so I kind of got into the mental health counseling space in grad school, finished that and worked on my master's in business and education as well. Kind of doubled up on some things, and then eventually got my PhD as well at the University of Florida. Um, Kind of bounced around. It was at a number of different places. Worked at the NFL Players Association. Worked at Clemson University. Worked with the Philadelphia 76ers for several years. Worked with professional soccer in Sacramento for several years. And then Coach Napier, asked if I wanted to come back to Florida to kind of help build the program that he's building. And I believed in his mission. And just one interview with him, I kind of saw like, okay, he actually cares about the athlete more than just what they do on the field. And so I could get behind that. And here I am. So long story short, or long story long, but that's kind of been my journey. And yeah, it hasn't been a straight path, but I think as you kind of go through your journeys, you learn that no one's path is really straight. And I'm really happy for some of the things I've been able to do and some of the people I've been able to come across with.
That is inspiring. I have goosebumps actually. And I think about when you were talking about the injuries and things, how we think the path is going to be a certain way, all of us, when we set out on whatever it is, and it's never that.
Yeah.
And there's always a twist and a turn or a something. And what I really like about your story is that you were able to take those things that some people would have said, all those surgeries, all that pain, all that stuff, and would have thrown in the towel. And you didn't throw in the towel. You found a way to use all of it in your favor. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there was anybody, any mentor, anybody showing you how to do that or encouraging that, or was it maybe more because it was instilled in you from your family?
Yeah, well, I think there was definitely people that helped me along the way. And I think sometimes people can say like I just pulled myself up and I did it all myself, but I think that's very rare where nobody's helping you. Even people that you don't necessarily might be indirectly, but I think people are always kind of helping your story to become who you are. But it definitely, so I would say like my mom was a huge figure for me. To be quite honest, she didn't want me to play football. She was like, "You're leaving basketball to do this? This seems dangerous." And it was tough for her to watch me play. But she was like, "Hey, if you want to do this, I'm gonna support you and you can go ahead and do it." But she was the one person who my relationship didn't, once I got injured, my relationship didn't change. Now, I think there's a transition that a lot of athletes face when they're no longer in the limelight, they're no longer the guy. There's a transition and there's a shift that they can feel. It's palpable where people don't love on them as much as they used to. People don't like say, "Hey, you're so and so." Like there's a change, right? And so my mom was the first person that my worth wasn't dictated on what I did on the field. And even though I knew that beforehand, going through this experience really showed that because, like I said, the relationships you have with your teammates, your coaches, your fans, your whatever, fill in the blank, those often change when your role changes. And so for me to see that she was like, listen, I don't care if you play. I just want you to be healthy and happy and successful in whatever you want to do. And so that kind of gave me a little bit of confidence to see that football wasn't the only thing that I was good at. I knew it, but that kind of crystallized it and made it less abstract for me. Along my journey too, there was definitely a number of people that helped me. I mean, I had a trainer that was there through all of my surgeries and stuff. I've had a academic advisor who when I first came in as a freshman, was like, "Hey, you're a little bit different. I'm going to push you a little bit harder." And I was like, "Bring it on, let's do it." And then I also had people along the way. I had a mentor in my graduate school program who was my chair. She was huge in supporting me when I wanted to do my dissertation, focus on sports, and no one in the department had ever done something focused on sports before. And I also had a funny story actually with a mentor that I kind of found serendipitously, but she's been amazing. I mean, her name is Dr. Janice Hilliard, and so I actually came across her in grad school. She came to campus and was giving a talk to one of the classes. I had a professor who also served on my dissertation committee who he was like, "Hey, Stephen, there's someone on campus. I really want you to come see this. Watch this person give their talk." And I was like, yeah, yeah, sure, I'll be there. In my mind, I was like, there's no chance I'm going. Like there was zero chance it was at like night, it was like 7:30. And I was like, at the time I was in grad school, but I was also working on campus. Um, Also, trying to balance like the athletic schedule and whatnot. And I was like, there's no chance I'm going. Anyways, I was leaving on my way home, and as I was walking to my car, the professor had parked his car and was walking to the building. And he's like, "Hey, you're coming to the thing, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was just dropping my stuff off in my car." And he's like, "I'll walk with you." And I was like, "Oh wow, okay." It's completely by luck, right? And I was like, "What are the chances that we parked in the same lane in this massive parking lot?" and he saw me going to my car as he was pulling. Anyways, so I walked to this thing. I was like, you know what, I'm here, whatever. Let's just do it. Get to the speaker, and I sit in the back. It's a massive auditorium room or whatever. I sit in the back and listened to her talk, and she had an amazing talk, and that's where she actually told me she talked about player development, what it was, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like that. I want to do what she does. Like I really love that. Like I didn't know that that was a thing. Like I said, we had player development, but it was, like I said, a little bit more, and this is no knock to anyone, but it was a little bit more reactive than proactive, right? It was, if you got in
Mm,
trouble, there was issues, there was things that were happening that shouldn't be happening. How do we fix that? How do we kind of help you get through that? Versus like what tools can we instill and help teach you so that you can kind of be successful and kind of compound interest on your growth, right? And so after that, she finished her talk, and then the professor came up to me and he's like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to her." I was like, "Oh my gosh, all right, cool, fine." And so walked down there, talked to her about 15 minutes, and there's a line of students waiting to talk to her. Talked to her for 15 minutes, and left and whatnot. And the professor gave her my email, or I'm not sure how it happened. Either I gave my email, I'm not sure, I can't remember. This is a while ago, but she eventually emailed me later that night, said, "Hey, it was a pleasure getting to know you. I was really impressed by some of the things that you're interested in and what you're doing. Would love if you gave me a tour. I would love to see campus, and I would love if it was possible, give me a tour on campus," which I had offered her, just kind of saying like, "Hey, if you want to see the stadium, I can show you around the stadium. Let you know what we do and what it looks like." So I did that, and we kind of talked, and then had lunch, and she was kind of on her way back to New York. She was the vice president of player development in the NBA at the time, and so she was on her way back. But I asked her, I was a little bold. I was like, "Hey, I really love what you do. Would you be okay being my mentor? Like, would that be weird? Like, I would love to like kind of know how you navigated this and how you got to where you were." And she was like, "Absolutely. Like, this is what I love doing that." And so we kind of stayed in touch. And so she helped me understand what the field was, helped me understand how to kind of navigate things a little bit. And so to answer your question, like there's been a number of people throughout my career that have kind of helped me get to where I am. And so I can never say that, I did it all my own. I think there was a lot of motivation and will and discipline that was required on my part, but I think there was a lot of support and encouragement and reinforcement that I've gotten along the way too to kind of help me get to where I am. And even my wife now, she's helped me tremendously in, being able to do what I do and understand that like we're good because I'm doing this, and she's helping me in this other way. And so like there's always it takes a village, right? And so I think that that adage is really true. It's taken a lot of people to kind of help me get to where I am.
oh, that's great. And you know what else goes with all those people is you had to say yes
Hmm.
along the way. Like you weren't going to go, and then you run into the professor, which I think is just hysterical. And so then you end up
Yeah.
going. But then you had to be willing to say yes at all these junctures along the way. And you had to be willing and open to whatever was getting suggested,
Yeah.
And so it was definitely a two-way street, but you had to have that willingness. And I think that's a really big characteristic that's required if we're going to learn and grow and keep moving, is that being teachable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think so something you said, like being willing to say yes. I think that's something that I think just the way I was brought up, honestly, was, seizing the opportunities that were in front of me, right? And, being able to accomplish some things academically, and that not because of I'm smarter than anyone or, anything like that, but it's more so that I was like, all right, this is a challenge. Maybe I was naive to it, but I was like, I'm gonna try. Like, sure, let's do this, and if I fail, all right, I fail. If I do succeed, then better for me, right? So I think that's something that I would love, like I try to impart with our students now, but even just saying yes, putting yourself in that uncomfortable position, I think sometimes that's not sometimes, a lot of times that's where that growth comes from, being in those new situations and trying something you've never done before.
Yeah, I think that that's a huge thing. And I want to talk a little bit about learning styles
Okay.
and the way that all of us learn and take in information and grow and things. And one of the things I notice about gifted people, especially whether it's athletically or musically or whatever, is there's a big variance in how people take in information and assimilate it and bring it forward. And not everybody is a book learner, and some people have to hear it and some people have to do it, all those different things. Now, I'm assuming that in your role, when all these players and these new recruits come in, and the seasoned players and the whole team, you put them all, everybody all together, that there is a huge diversity in learning styles,
Oh yeah.
and probably more than even I can understand. But I have a pretty big picture. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
know there's more to it than I know, and part of your love, I think, really, a part of your calling is to be in that with everybody and help people find their way.
Yeah.
It's kind of like going in and being that voice, that person, that presence for people. That's that proactive part. So, would you mind sharing a little bit about some of the different strategies that you, or maybe some of the other people involved here, use to help different people with different learning strategies still learn the same thing? Like when they're learning plays, or they have to get disciplined between class and athletics. Like, how do you teach different learning styles? Because there's a lot of people listening to this podcast that they don't learn, like they could never sit and just do a class. There's
Hmm.
other ways to do it. So would you mind sharing a little bit about some different strategies that you use to bring along some of the people that don't do it the typical way?
Yeah, well, I think football is one of those sports because of how big the team is. You have people that the variance is so great, right? And so I think for me, even like I know that there are certain things that I'm not very good at. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I always struggled with math. Like I was diagnosed with like dyslexia a while ago, and I always struggled with math. And so like for me to like learn math, like earlier on, I would literally memorize the multiplication table, not like understand it, but memorize it, right? And obviously you can see there's a problem with that
Right.
as you get further and further on. But for me, it became like, what do I need to do to learn? And so because I had some difficulties of my own, that forced me to kind of get creative, right? And I think I had an environment where it was supported for me to kind of find a way to kind of learn and find a way to do things. That being said, kind of bringing that into kind of what I do, now, understanding that everyone's not going to soak in the information the way that you intend it, right? And so when we do teach, when we do have different experiences and engagements, we do that understanding that like we're doing it in different forms to try and cover different people. I think the
Mhm.
first thing is to understand who you're talking to and who you're trying to teach. We often try to do smaller group things because we know like if we try to talk to the entire team at once, not everybody's going to get the message that you're delivering, right? And so understanding who your audience is, understanding what works and what doesn't, right? I think um, especially today's age, like you're not going to sit up there with a PowerPoint and a clicker and kind of go through things and expect them to soak everything in, right? That just doesn't work. And we know, I mean, there's studies after studies that show that that's just not the most effective way to learn, right? And so, like, how do you break that down into ways that they can actually learn and engage with the information and engage with the material so that they can it can soak in, right? And not just kind of like be very surface level for them. Even when the coaches go through plays, like we do it in a number of different ways. Like, so first we do it on the clicker on the board. So it's video where they show them the play. They have it in their notebooks where they have it actual play, drawn up. Then they have like a blank play where they have to redraw that play. We have a room where we do walkthroughs so they can actually walk through the play. When we get down to practice, we'll do another walkthrough where they're physically walking through the play. And then we do think, coach does this thing where he'll like, all right, so and so's down, who's up? So like the next person knows how to fill in, or this person's out. How do we compensate for that? So like we go through different situations, different types of learning. So it's visual, it's audio, it's kinesthetic, it's engagement. You're trying to find different ways for that information to soak in. And so I think we do a really good job with that here, and I think part of that is having the intention of like, okay, we know we have to serve different people. We know that everyone has different skills and strengths and learns in different ways. How do we make sure we cover all of that as much as possible? And then obviously you have one-on-one stuff with guys, right? I think that's where the best learning happens when you're spending that one-on-one time. Now, is it feasible to do that with all 130 some odd guys on the team? No, but I think having those one-on-one moments, especially when it comes down to finances or, mental health or, relationships or whatever else it is, I think having those individual conversations, you can kind of see and assess, okay, that's not soaking in. Let me try it a different way. And then you ask and re-ask and kind of see, okay, what are they grasping here? How do I reinforce this? and then you keep that conversation going. But you really have to make sure that you understand who your audience is, make sure you understand what you're talking about first and foremost, right? But and then, once you understand who they are, how they assess information, how they take in information, then you deliver it, and then you kind of retest and see if it's stuck and see what else needs to go on from there. So we try to do that as much as we can here throughout the organization and every single department, to be quite honest.
That is really something. And the cultural differences too are really, really vast. And so I
Right.
think
Yeah.
that you having lived in different areas of the world and having had a lot of the experiences that you've had positions you in a way to really understand a lot of different people coming from different things. Like I imagine that some of the people show up on that campus and they start seeing the nature of what it means to be in an elite program, and it's beyond what they even could comprehend.
Oh yeah.
And and it's like star-studded is probably not the right word, but that's kind of what it feels like, like.
Yeah.
And so, but then there's a lot of expectation that goes with that, and there's all of these different dynamics. So given all of that and 130 something athletes, and then you got the coaching staff and then the school and all these other things, what do you do to take care of yourself in all of this? Like, how does Stephen take care of Stephen? Because that's a big job, and you take it very seriously and you're really good at it. And so what is it that you do that takes care of you personally so that you can be your best?
It's a great question. I'm still working on that, right? I think that's one of those things that it's constantly evolving. As you change, your methods of self-care need to change too and adapt with it.
Mhm.
Um, I will say, like to your point, you said something about like, coming from different places. I will say, so when I worked in Sacramento, working in soccer, soccer is the most international sport that there possibly can be, right? It's literally everywhere. And one of the things that helped me in that position is that I had lived in different places. I've, been exposed to different things, and so I could understand, the perspective of the guys who we were serving a little bit better and a little bit easier. Something as simple as like, the visa, not simple. I say that very lightly. Something as complex as the visa situation of guys coming in and
Mhm.
coming into market from another country. Some people might assume that that process is easy, but having gone through it myself, I'm like, okay, I know what this is going through, so I know what you're dealing with and the timetable you have to work with it. So, I do think like my background in having, been to different places that served me so well, and something I'm extremely privileged to have because I know that that's not common, and it's definitely helped me. But to answer your question about self-care, man, I think the biggest thing is understanding what you need. I think sometimes people approach self-care as this uh, similar to how player development was, very reactive versus proactive. It's like, all right, I'm going to take care of myself once a crisis happens, or once the alarm bells go off, or once it's like a nuclear shutdown. Like that's when obviously I'm going to have to take it. That's when I take care of myself. And I think I've gotten to that point, and I think once you get to that point, sometimes it's a little bit too late, right? I think you have to be proactive with that, and I think that starts with boundaries. I think I've gotten really good at understanding what my boundaries are and understanding what that looks like, especially in this space where player development, it's 24/7, right? I mean, something could happen with the player, and you got to get on the phone or got to figure out, what's going on. And so understanding what my boundaries are, understanding what I need. I very like, forward, forward facing position. And so I do a lot of interaction with people. I know that I'm more an introvert. And so I know that while I enjoy interacting with people, that depletes my battery, and I need my time to kind of re-energize and kind of get that back. And so I understand that, right? And so you kind of build that in through, and you're a little bit more proactive where so it's not so much of like, okay, I'm going to work, 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 and then I'll recharge my battery. It's like, okay, how do we balance this out so it's a little more balanced, right? And so I like to tell guys that balance, I use that word very common and very often, but balance is not necessarily one to one. It's not necessarily, all right, rest this amount of time and work this amount of time. That's not necessarily balance. It's not really feasible, right? But
Right.
balance is it's active. It's what are you doing to kind of keep the homeostasis of your life, right? And that's a constant thing that you constantly need to have to reassess that. And so for me, a big part of that is cooking. I love to cook. I think I try to do at least once a week, once every other week. When I mean cook, I mean like throw down, like have a nice meal, not just like weekday dinner kind of thing. I really enjoy doing that because I kind of zone out, nothing else matters in the world except for what's going on right in front of me. Because if I don't do this, we don't eat, and you don't eat, right? And
That
so
won't be good. That will not be good. We want to eat.
exactly. So you have to have that focus, right, in what you're doing, and
Right.
it's kind of a mix between like art and science. I think cooking is like, there's certain things, there's certain equations that you need to have, certain ratios you need to have, but then also you can kind of put your own flair on things and kind of change things up to make it you and what you like and fit your taste. And so cooking for me is something that I've learned over the years that I really have a passion for and I really enjoy doing. And I know my wife enjoys it too. So I think it's a win. It's a win-win in my book. And also being physically active, working out. I try to stay active. I don't try to keep up with the guys. They're like, "Hey, jump in." I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. I understand what my limitations are, and I've had a lot more years on this body than you have." But staying active is something that I've found out that I needed. There was a period of time where I stopped really working out and stopped really being active, and I felt my mental health deteriorate. I felt like I lost that balance, and I didn't know what exactly it was because my body felt good, but my mind didn't feel good. You know what I mean? And so like
Right.
there
Yeah.
was something that was missing in that equation. And so being able to kind of make sure that I'm, attuning, attending to some of these needs and intentionally, I think is something that's really helped me. So like I said, I think understanding what my needs are, understanding my boundaries and making sure I'm constantly doing that. And that also, my wife plays a huge role in that, reminding me like, hey, take it easy, relax. Hey, you need to chill out. You're on that train again. You need to, take a stop, right? And so having people who can help you and remind you of that too can sometimes be huge and invaluable.
Right. Somebody cares about you enough to say, "Hey, hold on a second here. It's time out.
Right.
Time
Yeah.
out."
I can
Right.
see you
Exactly.
spinning, so
I see it coming. I know this pattern.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right. When you were talking about the people who wait till there's a crisis to do self-care, I call that recovery time, right? Like we damage something, so we got to recover. And really
Yeah.
taking care of ourselves, you said it perfectly, is like fluid and it moves with us as we grow and change. And it also matters that we're attentive to what our own needs are. I also
Yeah.
really love that you talked about boundaries because you do have a 24/7 job and anything can happen at any time with so many different things. And
Yeah.
so without boundaries, it's an accident waiting to happen, and
Yeah.
we don't want that. Right. And I think it kind of goes with naturally Plato's statement that you get the behavior you tolerate. And so
Yeah.
if you have squishy boundaries and all kinds of crazy stuff happens, then you're going to get more of whatever that is. And
Yeah.
then everyone pays the price because I think we're respected more when we have healthy boundaries that are clear and consistent. And
Correct.
you're role modeling and mentoring, what actively or not, I mean, just by your presence, all these young people, that are developing and finding their way. I mean, they come to you out of high school. And when you think about the age and the development of a person, and then you add on to it athletic performance and academics and all of the things, there's a lot of development and a lot of changing and growth happening
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
the time. And so your healthy boundaries helps them respect healthy boundaries and develop them for themselves. And that to me is like the perfect definition of a role model and a mentor. Like, okay, this is how you do it, not by just your words, but by your demeanor and your actions and your conversation, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And especially with the young men that we work with, I mean, there's so much pressure that they experience. There's so much stuff that it is not normal, right? Like it's not normal for, a 17-year-old to walk down the street and having people scream at them. You know what I mean? That's not normal, right? And so for them to be able to understand what boundary setting looks like and understand, how to, discern what's good information versus bad information, what's good criticism versus bad, social media. Like there's a lot of different things that they have to navigate now. And so I think the more that we can do it and show them, I think the better it is. Now, it isn't always liked, especially when you set boundaries like, hey, this is A plus B equals C, like this is what we got to do. Um, it's not always liked, but I think it does, to your point, model and show them, okay, what does this look like? And once everybody understands what the expectations are and once you're consistent with those things, I think that's where that growth happens and that's where that understanding kind of comes to play. So it's important. It's huge.
Right. And that's the whole developing the whole person.
Yeah.
It's just not about going in the gym and working out and winning a football game. There's way more to it.
Yeah.
There's way more to it,
So, so much. Yeah.
and I was raised racing sailboats, and it's a team sport, and it was highly competitive and still is. And it was a lot of those things. Like I remember my mom, especially, and my dad, but my mom was really verbal about being present and having the right boundaries and doing the right thing. And back then there were like no women racing sailboats.
Mm,
It was my mom and I. I don't
yeah.
ever remember anybody too much later. But it was that sportsmanship and celebrating when somebody beats you, that they beat you, and then be better the next time and
Right.
show up and don't cower back and all of those things. And so there's lots of ways that we can translate all the different things from life into sports and sports into life or music or whatever. And so I have a couple other questions that I'm just curious
Yeah.
about, because I really am enjoying how you're speaking. And so if you're really enjoying Stephen like I am, you guys check out all the information in the show notes. You can follow him on social media and all of those things. And then when you're rooting for UF's football team this season, you can think of Stephen. Because I know I will, because I bleed orange and blue. Everyone knows that, so it's not a surprise.
Go
Um,
Gators.
yeah, go Gators for sure. And the whole thing, the thing that the reason why I even bring it up that way is that, I mean, I went to school there in the 70s, and I still get goosebumps, and I still feel a connection to the people, the places, the experience of
Mm,
the culture of that university.
yeah.
And there for a while, when the whole commercials were going on, every time you see somebody with a Gator thing on, go Gators anywhere in the
Yeah.
world, we still do that.
Yeah.
And so I think that having that sense of community and connection worldwide, wherever we are, that's us. I think
Yeah.
that matters. And so I would like you to speak to a minute about the importance of that kind of bigger culture of not just the team, but like, not just a football team, but there's all the athletes. University of
Yeah.
Florida is loaded with athletes, and they all have really good academic performance. It's not lopsided at all.
Yeah.
But then there's also the culture of the school itself. And then we got the SEC, right? So there's all these different
Yeah.
layers of culture. I had a friend of mine come to me to a UF game. It was when Dana Warfel was the quarterback, and she went to school at Rutgers.
Mm,
And so every time the offense would have the ball, the whole stadium went completely silent. She goes, "You guys pray every time the offense has the ball." And I went, "Well, basically."
yeah.
And then it was this crazy, all the other time. And so she had great appreciation for the culture and the
Yeah.
community and the energy of it all. So we speak a little bit to how that's impacted you and your world, and how it impacts the guys. Like, because I think it's a really important thing to realize that there's a sense of community and connection, and it's valuable to those of us who are gifted.
Yeah. So I will say the first time I really experienced that was when I first got to UF. And now I knew, like I had visited, and so I kind of like knew what, campus looked like and what it was. But the first time I ran out into the swamp for a game, I mean, that is a drug in and of itself. I'll be honest. Like it's something that you cannot and have not mimicked ever again in my life, right? The first time and every time after that, running out was just something so special, right? And so when you run out and you have like 95 plus thousand people cheering and like screaming and like that is something that is just unlike anything anywhere else I've ever been. And so that was the first time I really felt it. And so I will say like it's also something that like throughout the years that my career afterwards, after leaving, I've had opportunity to travel a number of different places. And when you tell someone you're from Florida, they automatically like the brand recognition or whatever you want to call it is automatically there. Um, and there's always that healthy rivalry of FSU or Georgia or Tennessee or whatever it is. And so that connection is like something that you're proud to be a part of, right? It's when someone bleeds orange and blue, like it really shows and you really kind of feel it, right? There's a warmth there that you're like, okay, we're connected in this really integral way and we have this shared experience and you understand what it means to be a Gator type of thing, right? And so that's something that's so powerful. And even in the stuff that we do now with some of our students, we're fortunate enough to be able to travel the country, within the country and also outside of the country. And at every single point, every time we've traveled, we've always run into other Gators. And I think for us, I think that's for me, kind of working with these young men, I think that's been really cool for them to see in action that Gator Nation is really everywhere. Um, we say it all the time. We call it out. We tell them like, "Hey, Gator Nation's every like that degree means something, right?" And I think it's all abstract until they actually see it in action. And then when we take them off campus to different states, to different cities, to different countries, and someone is like, "Go Gators" in Japan, you're like, "Wait, what?" And they actually see that, and they're like, "Yes, we're telling you, it's everywhere." And then it becomes real to them, and then like it goes from being this abstract thing of like I'm part of this, you know, cloth, I'm part of this mural to like now you're actually realizing that you're, or I'm actually part of something that's real, especially when we're able to take them out there, right? And so, one of the coolest moments that I've had, just a personal story, was I was in France just for a vacation. Quite honestly, it was impromptu, just kind of was like, let's go. So I just kind of went by myself and I was walking down the streets. I was walking from the Louvre Museum to the Eiffel Tower, which is a good walk, but I was like, this is the best way you're going to see a city. And as I'm walking, I had a backpack. I was wearing plain clothes, not Gator marked, but I had a backpack that was had a Gator thing on it. And someone saw the backpack. And at this point, I'd been there for a couple days, so I'm used to hearing French. Like I wasn't used to hearing English, if that makes sense. So
Sure.
like, as I was walking, someone was like, "Go Gators" in like a very French accent, but I heard it very clearly, and I was like, and like I was like, "Wait, am I?" And I turn around, and this person was there, was like, "Go Gators," and just did like a little chomp, and they kept on walking, and I was like, "Wait a second, come on back, we got to talk." I was like, "What?" I was like, how do you know what get like because you could tell like they were speaking they were French speaking and so like English wasn't their common tongue and so I was like, how do you know what Gators are? And she was like, well, I did a study abroad program and I went to a UF game. She didn't go to study abroad at UF. She was with another school, but the person that her host family took her to a UF game. That was the first time she saw American football. And that was when they taught her what Go Gators means. And so she's like, as soon as I saw it, that was she's like, I said, Go Gators. And I was like, that is so cool. Right. Like literally randomly in France, just having someone just say like Go Gators. And for me, that was the point where I was like, okay, this really is everywhere. And since then, we've had programs where we've taken guys to Japan, Italy, and a bunch of other countries and places. And, inevitably in every single one of the trip, to date, knock on wood, we've run into a gator. So that's really cool.
Oh yeah, that's really I just think it's really neat, but I think it's important, and the reason why I bring it up is we in this whole world of social media and electronic everything, that sometimes that human connection can feel a little lost, or introverted people and extroverted people too, gifted people really have a different kind of sense of existential loneliness. Like I'm part of
Mhm.
the team, but I'm not part of the team, or
Right.
I'm part of this, but I don't feel part of it even though I am, and or maybe I don't even think I am, even though I am. Like there's all of these different levels of disconnect that's happening in the world. And I think that being able to live a sense of community locally and globally is healing for all of us. And I
Definitely.
there's other major universities as well that have a similar thing, like Ohio State, Michigan. Like there are other schools that have it, but I know it because I talk about to you because I went to UF, but I went to other schools. That's
Yeah.
not where the only place I got a degree from, and
Yeah.
I don't feel this same way toward those other schools. And I've had people ask me about that before, and I'm like, well, because the experience and the camaraderie and the connection kind of got inside the existential loneliness I feel as a gifted person, and I can connect with people. And
Yeah.
and I'm a geek enough of one. I'm an athlete and I like creative things. And so you do that. That's all over the place in that scenario.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important. So is
Yeah.
there
And
any,
it's really cool. Like um, being able to I tell the guys like as I do a lot of work with the guys as they're graduating and transitioning out into whatever career path they want. I tell them I was like, listen, go to Gator clubs, right? They're all over the country, all over the world, and part of that is because when I've kind of moved across different states, different countries, I've used that as a point to let me connect with someone who, with a group that I know I have a shared interest in. And then from there, you build a sense of community. And it's an easy way for you to, you know, you know, overcome some of that loneliness, overcome some of that like isolation, right? Because you're part of this larger fabric and you're part of this network that you can really use to your advantage, both professionally and personally. And so it is huge. It is huge.
And I think that's a really good point because Gator clubs are everywhere. But if you're listening to us and you're not thinking about a Gator club, there are different clubs to different organizations and different schools and things all over. And that's a
Right.
great way to feel less alone because you're with people that had a shared experience.
Right.
And so it starts to help heal that loneliness or that sense of being isolated. And that's a really good point. And I love all your points. This is so exciting. But anyway, I know I'm watching the time and I'm paying attention to the fact that we could talk forever probably. And so is there anything that you wanted to share about or anything on your heart that you think that would be useful before I ask you your two final questions of the show?
No, well, I just think that I think there's something that stood out to me is like for people, especially gifted people, especially people who have high aspirations, it's important for people to be able to understand and define, articulate their goals, articulate what they're striving for. I work in a very solution focused CBT model of when I work with people, and I think there's such power being able to say this is my goal and being able to break that down. And there's this one. I saw a video somewhere where this guy said this thing. It's very eloquent, and I'm going to butcher it terribly, but I'll try to say it anyways. Well, they said something along the lines of like, if someone asked you to do 1 + 1, you could do that simple math in your head and pretty easy. But if someone gave you a huge equation, 30, what's the square root of 63.5 or whatever, I don't know, something random, right?
Right.
Like if they gave you a piece of paper, you could write it down and you could probably figure that out, right? And then they said, well, okay, well, how much more complicated is life? And you're trying to figure all of that in your head.
Right.
And that hit me in such a powerful way. I was like, holy smokes, you're right. Like, and
Mhm.
I've been journaling and I encourage players and people to journal as much as possible because I think there's such power being able to get your thoughts out into words and it crystallizes and helps bring it from abstract into something that you can actually manipulate and move and challenge and shape and assess and reassess and course correct. And it's only when you're able to do that that you can really kind of gain the power that you really unlock the power that you really have. And so for me and speaking out to our students and speaking out to your audience as well, I think there's such power in being able to write down and articulate your goals and articulate the things that you're striving for, articulate the things that you're feeling, because I think when you're able to do that, I think you take it from abstract to tangible and you can actually work on it. So if anything else, that's the nugget I'll leave you with.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that's a really important one too, because I think sometimes people do try to manage it all in their head, especially neurodivergent people. I just keep it all in their head. And that's
Yeah,
just a train wreck waiting to happen right there.
it is.
It's
It
just,
is. It really
it's a
is.
mess. Write it down.
Yeah.
Write it down.
Physically
Yes.
write it down. Yeah. Yeah. It's really important.
Yeah, it's very important. So I have two final questions that are just kind of fun questions, and then we'll close the show. And remember, everybody, to check out Stephen's information, his bio, and everything is in the show notes. And let him know you heard him here on Someone Gets Me with me, and I'll get to see him soon myself. Anyway, so first question is, what is the most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Ooh,
Which is a good question for you because you've been all over and had all these great experiences. So, what's the most memorable
yeah.
one?
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. So by memorable is just something that like it was just I've created it was so unique that it struck me different, or something that is I've attached to a memory that is so powerful. Which way should I?
Either whatever way popped in your head first is fine with me. And everybody, this is evidence of his giftedness right there by asking a question to nuance out the very simple question of the most memorable food. We're going to define it in multiple ways. So this is an evidence of an intellectual overexcitability in a gifted person. So just thought I'd point that out to everybody. So
Yeah.
answer the question any way you'd like to. Whatever pops in your mind first is the ones I love.
Okay, so For me, I would say Nigerian, specifically Nigerian jollof rice. That is the most memorable. Like if I was to have a dish for the rest of my life, I think that is what it would be. Specifically Nigerian. There is a big debate between, and if any of your listeners are Nigerian or Ghanaian, like there's a big debate between them, and I'm here to settle it now that Nigerian jollof is the ultimate type of jollof rice, period.
All right. Nigerian specific. I love it. That's the perfect thing. Now I have to have some to try
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So the second question is, if we were going to put a billboard up that the entire world was going to see with Stephen Ali's quote on it to inspire the world, what would that quote be? That's an original quote from you.
This is something that I live by. This is an easy one. This is something that I live by. It's find your balance and make every day count. For
I
me,
love it.
thanks. That's something that I've over my years and through dark times, good times, everything. That's something that I've, constantly, I don't know how, but, just been drawn to that is like find your balance. Like I said, balance is not one to one. Find your balance. It's unique to you. And then the second part of that, is the growth mindset part of make every day count. Like it doesn't have to be every day you're not necessarily fearing the, cure to cancer kind of thing. Not every day is necessarily going to be this huge, epiphany, but every day counts towards something, right? Whether it's rest that counts towards something, whether it's striving for a new goal, whether it's failure that counts towards something, right? And so for me, those are words that I live by. Those are things that I try to impart in other people, and I would put that on a billboard 7 days a week.
All right. Well, there you go. It's going to be on the billboard. I love that. Anyway, that is really, really cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. And thank you for all of the great stories and the information. I've had goosebumps pretty much the whole time we've been talking. And that's how my little angels give me messages that, oh my God, that's good. You're on the right track and everything. And I knew when I met you that you were a really special, unique, just soul.
I
And
appreciate that.
you've confirmed that with me today. So thank you so very much for
No,
being on
thank
the show.
you. This is awesome. I'm really glad I could be part of it.
It was really fun. And so remember, everybody, to put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you. Because remember, you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine. And remember to keep your balance and make every day count, as Stephen says. So until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Diane and Stephen saying, be well. Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episodes, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.